Hello Clash fans! Trample damage coming at you today from the comfort of my bedroom as I am preparing to go out to dinner with my father-in-law. Today we are bringing you the Royal Champion equipment comparison. I know the Barbarian King just had a spiky ball come out and I have a cool video in the works for that, but my replays are about to get dumped from this video that I made on the Royal Champion. So I'm going to go ahead and do this now and we will come back with the spiky ball comparison in a little bit. As you know, the Royal Champion has 4 pieces of equipment that are currently available, all of her common equipment, and there are 6 combinations. We can have the classic combination of the Royal Gem along with the Seeking Shield. We can also do the Royal Gem with the Haste Vial. We can do the Royal Gem with the Hog Puppet. We can do the Seeking Shield with the Hog Puppet, the Seeking Shield with the Haste Gem, and of course the Hog Puppet with the Haste Gem. This is all basically some iteration of the same thing, which is help the Royal Champion take stuff down faster. So we're actually going to do, there are 6 combinations, and I'm going to show you, I devised this base layout here that had 4 different compartments that we're going to wind up attacking. One is this compartment here that has the Eagle Artillery along with an enemy Barbarian King and a Grand Warden, something that's fairly common that you would wind up seeing on a base. We also have a compartment over here that has essentially a Tesla farm with some Inferno Tower, Builder Hut, Archer Tower, and then a little further down a Bomb Tower and a Scatter Shot. Then we have another compartment where there is a bunch of the big boy defenses for the Royal Champion to fight. And the last compartment is more of a skeleton trap, like a skeleton farm trap, along with a poison spell tower. So what I did is I attacked each of these 4 quadrants of the base with all 6 combinations, which is 24 combinations. But then we also did a version where the Haste Vial is actually sometimes substantially more viable if you wind up using it earlier on. Because as you know, and if you don't know, there is no really huge hit point boost that you wind up getting from the Haste Vial. You get no additional hit points, you get no additional hit point recovery. So when you use the Haste Vial when the Royal Champion's about to go down, which is like people often wind up letting these abilities go to auto trigger, that's actually a very bad thing. So one of the key takeaways I want to show you is using a Haste Vial a little bit earlier with the Royal Champion is probably better, because in almost every single combination that we looked at, the Haste Vial being used earlier on is more beneficial. The rest of the combinations, we just end up showing the Royal Champion letting her ability go to auto use. So I went ahead and started with a Giant in here for a small amount of distraction. I did that with all of them, largely because I'm also doing this attack at Town Hall 14 and Town Hall 15, and I also did some versions where I needed the Royal Champion to attack some heroes. So I started all of them with the same general idea of having a Giant come in, and we did pair the Royal Champion with the Spirit Fox, which is the more natural hero pet to use at Town Hall 16. The same versions of these I did for Town Hall 15 used Diggy, and the same 14 versions used Lassie. So here we see the Royal Champion is able to get through a total of 7 buildings before she eventually goes down, and the 7 buildings, some of that was taken with the Seeking Shield. So that's the first one that we're going to wind up showing you. The second one is this Tesla Farm Inferno part over here, where again, we're just going to start with the healer, with the Giant, send in the Royal Champion, and we're going to let her ability just go to auto use. Teslas start popping up. Of course, that's no good for her. She's going to wind up encountering some more stuff. She does continue to go invisible with the Fox. The Fox is attacking the elixir storage. We'll go ahead and speed this along. She goes to use her ability, pops off a few other defenses on the back end, and manages to get down between her and the Spirit Fox 11 of these buildings before she winds up getting destroyed. You will notice that the overall damage of this is going to show a higher number, like 18% by the time she is destroyed, but that's because this base doesn't have all the buildings on there, so bear with me. So in the first portion of the base, we ended up taking 7 buildings down. The second portion, we took 11 buildings. Here, we're only going to get 2 buildings. So we have a skeleton trap, 2 skeleton traps, 3 skeleton traps, along with a whole bunch of big defenses. And the Royal Champion is attacking skeletons, uses the Seeking Shield. Her Royal Gem gives her a lot of hit point recovery, but she just can't get past any of those skeletons. And she winds up going down very quickly after destroying only 2 buildings. The last compartment is up here where we've got a bunch of skeletons along with a poison spell tower, and the Royal Champion manages to get a couple of buildings on the outside before heading into this portion of the base, and is only able to take down, because of all these skeleton traps, she's only able to take down 4 buildings by the time she gets destroyed. And that fourth building actually only comes, again, Seeking Shield is wonderful. The 2,000 points of damage is excellent, but only because the Seeking Shield comes into play to take that down. Otherwise, the Royal Champion goes down after having only destroyed 4 buildings. So what I want to show you is, right here, we're going to pop up this graphic where when we compare this, we're going to go to the gem and the hogs. This portion of the base here, the most powerful combination throughout this area is a tie between this version here, where the Royal Champion is using the Royal Gem and the Hog Puppet, the Royal Champion's Seeking Shield plus the Hog Puppet, and the Seeking Shield plus an early use of the Haste Vial, which we'll come back to that in just a moment. So you can see the chart here shows you what the best was against this compartment. Move up here and we take a look at the best combinations against this compartment, and it was the Hog Puppet with an early Haste Vial, which we're going to show you a couple examples of that in just a minute here. But the Hog Puppet with an early Haste Vial was the strongest, followed by a tie between the Hog Puppet and a Let It Go to auto ability use of the Haste Vial, tied with the Royal Gem and an early Haste Vial, also tied with the Seeking Shield and an early Haste Vial. So a lot of good Haste Vial stuff, a lot of good Hog Puppet stuff. This compartment here, I just probably packed too much stuff between the skeletons. So we already know that the skeletons are annoying for the Royal Champion to take care of, but this just underscores very clearly how damaging these skeletons are. The Hog Puppet, along with an early Haste Vial, was the strongest against this compartment here, followed by the Seeking Shield and the Hog Puppet. So 2 versions of the Hog Puppet taking the prize here as the hogs try to scatter past those skeletons, really, right? They're just ignoring the skeletons to head on. And in this compartment here, our best was a 3-way tie between the Royal Shield, or the Seeking Shield, plus the Hog Puppet, the Hog Puppet plus both uses of an early and a late Haste Vial. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is this is the only situation in this compartment where I use the Royal Gem plus the Haste Vial, and letting it go to auto ability actually worked better than the Royal Gem plus an earlier Haste Vial. It's the only iteration where it was less beneficial to trigger the Haste Vial at least somewhat early. And like we indicated already, when you look, the Royal Champion, of course, does have some natural hit point recovery. She winds up, when she's maxed, she winds up picking up 1,300 hit points of her 4,038, which is great. And her equipment, the Royal Gem, obviously gives her the biggest, where we recover 2,400 hit points. The Hog Puppet next with 1,000 health recovery that she winds up getting. Seeking Shield, no additional hit point recovery, but does start with 380 more hit points, and the Haste Vial gives no benefits to hit points whatsoever. So we are going to wind up taking a look at a couple of examples here where we are going to show you, so for the King and Warden area, the best abilities that we ended up having were a 3-way tie between the Hog Puppet and the Gem, which we're going to wind up showing you. I hit the wrong button. The Hog Puppet and the Royal Gem, where we wind up getting down 11 buildings coming into this compartment here, and we'll go ahead and do it in 2x speed. The Giant, of course, again, present in all of these and attacking. The Royal Champion comes in, starts attacking a bunch of stuff, and remember, this is the Hog Puppet along with the Royal Gem, and when the Royal Champion is about to go down, here's the big piece, the blink. So the Spirit Fox is already down, but when she uses that Hog Puppet, and this is why the Hog Puppet is such a powerful piece of equipment, when she uses her ability, she disappears from enemy sights for a moment, and the presence of all those Hog Riders instantly redirects and distracts everything in the area, giving the Royal Champion opportunity to enjoy the hit point recovery that she gets naturally and the extra 1,000 that she gets from the max Hog Puppet. The extra hit point recovery, along with the hogs creating a distraction while she becomes invisible, is why this is such a powerful combination and why it is something that is very useful for the Royal Champion. So this is one example where she winds up getting a total of 11 buildings down. This combination here, if we look at this compartment, the worst pairing that we had in this compartment was actually the Royal Gem and the Haste Vial. The fewest buildings that ended up getting destroyed. We only destroyed 5 buildings. And again, we're going to let this go to auto ability. You can see we've got the Gem and the Haste Vial. The problem with this is, absent the Spirit Fox making her be able to become invisible, when she triggers that ability, we'll zoom in here so you can see this. when she is using the haste gem, when she's about to go down, yes, there is recovery from the royal gem, and there is recovery from the royal champion. But here we see, so she triggers her ability, she recovers some hit points, but she doesn't disappear from anything, right? The spirit fox is down at this point. There is nothing stopping these defenses from continuing to hammer away at her. Couple shots from the king, couple shots from the warden, and she immediately goes down. It's almost like her entire ability was completely wasted, even though she's going to wind up attacking more quickly with that haste vial. Too much damage on her just makes her so vulnerable, especially when you have multiple defenses that are on here. Now we're going to juxtapose that with what it looks like when we use the haste gem earlier and allow the speed from the royal champion to come in addition to her being at a slightly higher hit point rate. We're going to go ahead and let this happen. When she's down to about half of her hit points, we're going to wind up triggering her ability. So we've got, oh, there's her ability already triggered. I forgot I was looking for Hog Riders to come out of there. So she managed to take down the Eagle Artillery. It gave her an opportunity for the Spirit Fox to wind up turning her invisible because she ended up destroying some stuff before the enemy king came over to take her down, and it gave her a little bit more of an opportunity to continue because it was so hard for her to get through that enemy Barbarian King. And without her having the opportunity to buy herself more time, that is a more dangerous situation in which she can find herself. We'll take a look at that same thing in a different compartment here when we go to this Tesla versus the multi-target Inferno Tower compartment, along with all those giant bombs and some spring traps and stuff that is not very friendly to the Royal Champion. We will take a look at this one here using the Hog Puppet with the Haste Vial, which we can go here. We got Hogs, Shield and Haste. Haste plus Hogs is this one. So here is Haste plus Hogs. This is the second compartment here. She's going to get 12 buildings down. We wind up using, we'll speed through just a little bit, and now here we are where Royal Champion taking some damage, the Fox is taking some damage, the Royal Champion is engaging the multi-target Inferno Tower, but the multi-target Inferno Tower is dealing some damage to the Fox. Champion's ability triggers some giant bombs in there causing problems for the Hogs, but because they wind up distracting, she does wind up having an opportunity to start taking out more stuff, but a bunch of giant bombs in there become problematic for her. The Spirit Fox does wind up managing to take down that elixir collector before it gets destroyed. So that's what's letting her use that ability automatically, where it just goes to auto completion. If we use the haste vial early, it actually gives us the strongest portion of what we wind up seeing in this attack here, where we'll fast forward just a little bit. So here we are. Oh, one regular. We use her ability when she's only about halfway down on her hit points and winds up bringing out the Hog Riders a little bit earlier instead of waiting until she's lower. We wind up having more luck with the Hog Riders lasting a little bit longer, and the Royal Champion, by the time those hogs go down, she does wind up taking out more buildings, and she is able to destroy a few more buildings. Now, it's one of those things where you might wind up thinking, well, you know, there's just luck with the timing, and I don't disagree with that. There's always going to be luck with the timing on these, particularly when the Spirit Fox is involved. Spirit Fox, yay, we love you, Spirit Fox. But in every single example except for one, we ended up getting more value out of the Royal Champion when using an earlier haste vial, almost no matter what she was being compared with. Now, this compartment up here, as you could see from the graphic earlier, oh, this is not the replays. We're going on the replays. This compartment up here, this is the haste. The best that we ended up doing against this was the haste and the Hog Riders early on. We managed to get down only 4 buildings. This compartment here was just too much to handle. There's just far too much damage happening in here. We dropped the Royal Champion and triggered her ability early to let those Hog Riders get in there and start dealing some damage to help take down some of those more powerful defenses, but we didn't actually wind up getting very many of them down. Finally, the Hog Riders wind up creating a little bit of an opportunity, and her haste vial lets her take the skeletons down. She barely manages to get through 4 of those buildings before going down. There was just way too much damage and way too much distraction in there. Now, this is a very common thing that you wind up seeing with the Royal Champion is we frequently use her, and I like this, let me go back over here, and we're going to go to the Haste with Hogs early, 1, 2, 3, this compartment here, where we got 9 of the buildings down. This is a good example of the kind of thing that you'll potentially run into later in the game or later in an attack when you send your Royal Champion in to clean up a compartment. Now, the poison vial, the poison spell factory is not necessarily the greatest thing to send your Royal Champion in, but sometimes the pathing goes off and you're relying on your Royal Champion to clear a decent portion of the base, particularly with the Spirit Fox in tow. And here we do manage to get down 9 of the overall buildings as she's coming through here. We trigger the haste early, and the Hog Riders manage to get out of that poison vial, the poison spell tower, and move on a little bit further, tanking, taking some damage, putting a little bit of coverage for the Royal Champion while she's working with that haste vial to destroy all those skeletons and then move on to some of the defenses, where then she is eventually able to take out more because we have cut down on the number of defenses that are coming after her. Unlike the other heroes, with the Grand Warden, you're using the Fireball, or if you're using the Rage Vial, there are a lot of different types of attacks that you can set up. The Royal Champion is all just about taking down defenses. So everything that she has is all about making sure more defenses go down and that they go down more quickly. We are going to wrap this up by giving you the conclusion based on this rather academic attempt at trying to discern the best combinations of Royal Champion ability. If we look at these 4 different scenarios and we average the number of buildings destroyed in each of these, you can see the Royal Champion Seeking Shield combined with the Royal Gem, her typical base abilities that we always knew and loved about the Royal Champion, average destroying 6 buildings across these 4 different scenarios that we set up. When we wind up lining them up like this, and we try and rank all 9 of these combinations, now granted, there are only 6 combinations, but we added 3 more sort of new combinations of an earlier trigger on the haste vial. When we line these all up, you'll see that the strongest combination in terms of the number of buildings destroyed was the Hog Puppet with an earlier use of the haste vial, averaging 9.25 buildings destroyed. The second best was the Hog Puppet combined with the Seeking Shield, averaging 8.25. Now, I will say, this is something that is largely dependent on where the Royal Champion is coming in, the amount of additional damage that has been dealt by other buildings to help determine how much that Seeking Shield is able to deal. Because if the Seeking Shield is hitting an Eagle Artillery, a Monolith, a Ricochet Cannon, and a Multi-Archer Tower, it's going to be less effective than if it's picking off perhaps a Tesla and severely weakening a Bomb Tower, which has 2,700 hit points, maybe picking off a regular Archer Tower, which can be destroyed with the Seeking Shield because it only has 1,800 hit points. But the Seeking Shield ended up with paired with the Hog Puppet, gave us the second best combination, which kind of makes sense, right? The Seeking Shield, even against something like a Wizard Tower that has more hit points, can't be destroyed by the Seeking Shield, but is now down to 1,150 remaining hit points that the Hog Riders are able to help take out and deal some incremental damage to. Third most powerful combination was the Seeking Shield with an earlier use of the Haste Vial. So we have our top 3 abilities are the Seeking Shield with the Haste Vial, the Seeking Shield with the Hog Puppet, and the Hog Puppet with the Haste Vial. Granted, both of those of the earlier use of the Haste Vial, but none of those combinations include the Royal Gem. As we wind up shaping these out, what you can see is in every instance, the Hog Puppet with the Haste Vial was a 9.25 versus 7.5 with a allow the auto ability to be used. With the Seeking Shield and the Haste Vial being used automatically, we were at 6.25 versus an earlier use of the Haste Vial at 8 buildings destroyed. And then the Gem with the Haste Vial, the worst at 5.75, moving to 7.25 when we trigger the Haste Vial early. So if you rank these all top to bottom, it looks like the Hog Puppet and the Haste Vial are the best combinations, but you could also make a good argument for the Seeking Shield along with the Hog Puppet. What this really tells me, and I've actually noticed this with my bases, let me swipe out of here and come over to my other Clash of Clans instance. All of my bases, the primary equipment that I'm using is, well, that's my Town Hall 9. My Town Hall 9 does not have a Royal Champion because that would be cheating and that would not be fair. But when we pull up my Royal Champion, you can see this is my Rochester account. My Royal Champion is currently using in-game the Hog Puppet along with the Haste Vial, which is... I've been using this combination prior to making all of these different iterations of the video. This is just what has worked out for me over time more effectively. And while I went up checking out maybe my other 2 Town Hall 15s, I'm pretty sure that I'm using the Hog Puppet and the Haste Vial with all... Oh, no, you know what? One of these actually has a lower... Nope, Hog Puppet and Haste Vial. Let me check my 3rd Town Hall 16. I think this one might have a lower value Haste Vial because I haven't been grinding for as much ore on this one as I have on my other accounts. So yeah, I have the Royal Gem on this one. So shame on trample damage. I'm not even following my own advice. I've got the Hog Puppet with the Royal Gem, which is, I guess it's the 4th best combination of all the possible combinations that I could have. So it's not the worst combination, but it's the 4th best of the combinations. I really, really love the Hog Puppet. I'm a huge fan of Hog Riders. I always have been. If we wind up thinking about this, compare it like this. If we just get rid of the haste vial and just say we know that using the haste vial earlier than letting it go to auto ability is a more appropriate way of doing it, then we wind up saying, here's what it looks like with the Royal Gem coming up on the tail end of all of these different types of attacks, with the Royal Gem being the 4th, 5th, and 6th best combinations, with the Hog Puppet taking priority over the haste vial, taking priority over the seeking shield. When you actually average these all out and you just look at the value that comes across them, the Royal Gem has an average value across here of 6.69 buildings. The seeking shield has slightly better at 7.13. The Hog Rider, the Hog Puppet, has an average of 8.19. And we wind up looking at the combinations of the haste vial with the 3, because you can't pair the haste vial with an early haste vial. It's at 6.5, and then using the haste vial earlier is at 8.17. So it's kind of a natural inclination for me to use the haste vial along with the Hog Puppet. I am really loving it. My primary army right now is this Hydra army and the spiky ball. It's super powerful. I'm really loving it. I did manage, I'll talk about this in the next video when we do the spiky ball, but I did manage to go 18 of 21 in this Clan War League with my 3 Town Hall. We barely survived, but I did have my Rochester base 7 out of 7. My trample damage base was 6 out of 7, and my other trample damage base was 5 out of 7, but an average of 6 out of 7 triples throughout the course of the week. I was very proud of that. But the Royal Champion in most of those attacks was rocking. In every one of those attacks, I think, was using a Hog Puppet, and in most of them was also using the haste vial. What are your favorite combinations? What are you looking forward to? And I'm curious what you guys think would be some fun types of equipment that maybe would get the Royal Champion functioning a little bit differently than the way that she functions right now, where she's primarily just going after defenses. The Grand Warden, obviously, with the Epic Fireball and the Rage Vial, and there's some potential opportunities to do some attacks that revolve more around the Warden in a non-protective capacity. Maybe there are going to be some pieces of equipment in the future that give the Royal Champion an opportunity to function in a perhaps less defense targeting capacity. I'm not entirely sure. I hope you guys enjoy the video. I didn't mention anything about myself, of course. Obviously, subscribe to me here on YouTube. Check out my TikTok. Check out my podcast. I should have mentioned my podcast earlier. My podcast, Inside Clash with Trample Damage. Check out my podcast. I have a lot of fun doing that. I enjoy sharing with the community. I post a lot on Reddit in addition to Instagram, and I try to post some YouTube shorts as well. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Share with your clanmates. Make sure that you're subscribed, and we will check you guys out on the next video.